All right, so in this Helldivers 2 video, we're going to be going over everything that you need to know about having a max level pacifier. So this weapon is newly introduced in the Enforce of Law warbond, and basically this is very unique because it does have stun rounds and many other characteristics that make it quite interesting. But what we're going to be doing with this video is we're going to be going over all the available attachments, the best combinations, how it plays versus the factions, and more importantly, we're going to decide if you should rush out and level up this weapon or not. Anyways, let's talk about it. Before we talk about the stats and break down all the attachments, I wanted to show you how this gun feels in game. So the ergonomics are very good out of the box. I think they're 60, they're very high. So this weapon is already very snappy, which is great. The recoil is very manageable. It just goes straight up, very easy to control. You can just pull down and it doesn't really go side to side too much, which is very nice. The overall ammo economy is pretty good. You do get 8 total magazines because you get 7 in reserves and 1 in the magazine out of the box. And the reload is not terrible, but it's something I would like to be able to fix in some way or another. So the big things that we want to fix with this is we do want to tighten up that vertical to make it even more easy to do. If we can have some better scoping options as well, that'd be great because I don't really like reflexes too much. So it'd be nice to get a tube dot or something on here. And then lastly, we can fix the ammo economy in some way. That'd be great as well. But out of the box, this weapon feels really good just in terms of the base stats it has. The base stats for the AR-32 pacifier before weapon customization are the damage is 50, the capacity is 40, the fire rate is 700. This is medium pen, and again, it does have stun rounds. The horizontal recoil is 60, the vertical recoil is 23. The ergonomics are 60, the capacity is 40, the backup magazines are 7, and the reload time is 3 seconds. We have 3 categories for weapon customization from optics, underbarrels, and muzzles. First up is optics, so these primarily affect overall ergonomics. We do have reflex sights and holographic sights, which give you an ergonomics of 60. The 2x2 bread dot actually decreases your ergonomics by 3, and then lastly, the 4x combat scope decreases your ergonomics by 6. The underbarrels actually affect overall recoil, ergonomics, and bullet spread. By default, you have the laser with flashlight. No underbarrel actually gives you +5 to your ergonomics. The vertical foregrip decreases your vertical recoil by 7 and also tightens up your bullet spread by a bit. The angled foregrip increases your vertical recoil by 8, but also gives you 10 ergonomics, and it does slightly tighten up that bullet spread as well. The flashlight vertical foregrip does basically the same thing as the regular vertical foregrip, except it does decrease your ergonomics by 2. And then lastly, the laser sight angled foregrip does the same thing as the regular angled foregrip, except it only increases your ergonomics by 8 instead of 10. And lastly, for muzzles, these affect horizontal recoil, vertical recoil, ergonomics, and overall bullet spread. So by default, the muzzle brake is your main option, and essentially this gives you -6 to your horizontal recoil, and it also gives you -5 to your ergonomics. When you put on no attachment, this gives you a horizontal recoil of 13, vertical recoil of 23, ergonomics of 65. The flash hider brings down your horizontal and vertical recoil by 3, but it also brings down your ergonomics by 3, and you can see that it does tighten up the spread by a little bit. And then lastly, the compensator gives you the biggest change to vertical recoil, bringing that down by 9. It also decreases your ergonomics by 5. And then lastly, it does have a much wider spread when you do bring the vertical recoil down. So that's something to keep in mind there. So now that we've gone over all the attachments so that we can better understand how they impact the weapon, let's talk about the best combination of attachments that will make this weapon perform at its maximum capacity. So this first build we're going to be taking a look at is going to be the tight spread, low vertical recoil option. So the optics are going to be the 2x2 bread dot, the underbarrel is going to be the vertical foregrip, and the muzzle is going to be the muzzle brake. Primary thing I like about this is that we get to use the 2 red dot, which is one of my favorite scopes in the game, and I do have it set at 50 meters. If you do like to run max FOV, I feel like it gives you a good sighting option there. As for the recoil improvements, it's not bad at all. Basically, it goes up very slightly now instead of going up full bore, which is very nice. The same thing when you're aiming down sight. The reload is about the same. We can't really adjust that because there are no magazine options, but in terms of recoil control, we are definitely in a much better spot. We did have to drop the ergonomics by 3, giving us 57 instead of the 60, which is not too noticeable, but I would prefer to have the 60. But in general, in terms of the way this weapon performs now, in terms of its tighter spread and better recoil control, this is probably my favorite version of this weapon. This next build we're going to talk about is the high ergo, better recoil control. So for the optics, we are running the reflex MK2 sights. For the underbarrel, we're running the vertical foregrip, and then lastly for the muzzle brake, we are running the flash hider. I do like this MK2 sight quite a bit because it does have a better sight profile when compared to the other two options that we have in this category. As for the ergonomics, it does feel very nice overall. We do preserve that 60 ergonomics, which we actually get 62 now with this weapon, which is very nice. In terms of recoil control, we don't have very much vertical at all, and it does have a little bit more side to side, so it's going to be a little less accurate when we're single target shooting. When we do aim down sight, that does improve a bit, but when you are aiming from third person, the side to side recoil is definitely more noticeable. But the weapon overall feels much snappier with this version, and it does have good enough recoil control, especially side to side. So overall, this is a solid option as well. The next thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about what armor passives are the best to pair with this weapon. Obviously, if you want to use this weapon a lot, Siege Ready is going to be your best friend because you do get 30% extra reload speed. You also get 20% extra reserve magazines. So that means you're going to have more bullets overall to be able to shoot down range, and you're going to be reloading faster because this weapon already has kind of a slow reload speed. And since we don't have any magazine options to be able to fix that, it's going to stay about the same. So overall, this is going to be the most impactful toward the weapon directly. Now, if you want to run something else and don't want to run Siege Ready, Fortified and Engineer are actually very good as well because you do get 30% extra recoil control. This works at all levels that you're at, whether you're standing, crouched, or prone, and it's very good because it's going to tighten up that spread even more, so that way you can hit more weak spots more frequently, which is going to be even better for the weapon. All right, so let's talk about how this weapon performs against the factions now. So I primarily use the tight spread, low vertical recoil one because I felt like that weapon was the best overall. I like the scoping options and it just felt more comfortable to use. Now, if this is your first time watching a video like this for me, essentially how I like to do it is I like to stress test the weapon as much as humanly possible. So I'm going to give it all the advantages I can, like Siege Ready. Also going to be running the supply pack, so that way I don't have to be constantly calling in resupplies. And then more importantly, what I'm going to be doing is playing level 10 difficulty, pushing fights, letting the enemies call in reinforcements, basically creating a mini horde mode simulation that's going to really test the weapon's grit and see how it performs under pressure. The first thing you need to understand about this weapon is you need to understand what it excels at. So this is a really good single target medium range weapon, so it's really going to be powerful against some of those beefier enemies if you can get them in one-on-one situations like a brood commander, overseers, flesh mobs, or anything like that. It's going to be very good at being able to lock those enemies down and take them out very efficiently overall. Where this weapon is more mediocre in a lot of ways is against horde clearing, because you are expending so many bullets so quickly, and the fact that the stun doesn't quite work immediately, you're going to be overwhelmed very quickly, especially in swarm situations, because you're having to reload and the reload's slower even with Siege Ready. So that's some things that are pretty limiting on it. This thing also does struggle a little bit at range because it does have an initial bounce, so you're not always going to hit those weak spots even when you are kind of spray shooting it or kind of tap shooting it a little bit. So that's the things to keep in mind as well. But with that in mind, it's no surprise that this thing struggles pretty badly against the bugs. When you're facing the normal bugs, it's not terrible, but it's not the greatest. When you're facing the predator strains of bugs, it is absolutely horrible. Basically, it's a big liability, primarily because when you're getting swarmed by hunter variants or stalker variants and all the other bugs that are involved, it's impossible to really control what's going on around you. Now you can do other things like gas grenades and other stuff like that, sure, but the main selling point in this weapon is that it can stun, and the way the stun works is you need to focus a target for a moment and then they'll be stunned. This thing does not stun stalkers fast enough. It does not stun some of the beefier units fast enough for me to be able to control what's going on around me, and that's quite annoying overall. Also, this weapon does have very little stagger, so it's not going to be able to flinch bugs like other weapons. So that's really where the weaknesses lie with this weapon, is that the stun is not effective enough versus the bugs. There's no stagger with this thing, and in general, the best way of running this thing is to run it with something like the gas dog or even gas grenades, which is fine. But I feel like with this weapon, if you're going to be heavily using it, you need supply pack, you need Siege Ready, and then you're going to be chewing through ammo if you don't have those things. But if this is not going to be your primary source of dealing damage and you just want it to mainly focus on some of the bigger targets, then sure, it's going to be fine. But if you want to use this as one of your primary damage sources, this is not the weapon to use versus the bugs. So against the Illuminate, it's quite a different story. I think this weapon works quite well because you're not being swarmed as much as you are on the bug front. It's more manageable overall, and you can engage more enemies at that medium range, which is where this weapon excels. And more importantly, there's more single target opportunities with the Overseers, which is why I like this thing so much. So if you get the flying Overseers, they basically will stop in place because you're single target focusing them. You can kill them very quickly with headshots and body shots. The same thing for the ground Overseers. So this weapon excels at being able to take out Overseers very easily, which I do love quite a bit. This weapon is also very good at taking on the flesh mobs because the flesh mobs can be stunned if they're not in their berserk mode, which this weapon does output a lot of bullets. So you can catch them sometimes not in their berserk mode, and they will be stunned in place, which is nice. And then in terms of the overall damage output, you can kill a flesh mob with this weapon in around 2.5 magazines, which is pretty good overall for a primary weapon when you take consideration this is an AR. So I like how it performs against the flesh mobs as well. It's not a world beater, but it is nice with how it performs. It can also work well against the harvesters as well. It will stun them for a few seconds just like the other enemies, but it's nothing to write home about. And then lastly, it's not great with the stingrays because of the low damage. It's going to take way too many bullets to take out a stingray, but overall with the tighter spread, better vertical recoil control, I like this a lot. Being able to take on those Overseers, stop them in place, make them much easier to shoot was really nice. I actually like this quite a bit versus the Illuminate. So when I first started using this weapon versus the bots, I thought it was a solid weapon. I didn't think it was anything to write home about, but I thought it was solid. But now that I've played with it quite a bit, I can see its clear weaknesses. So the optimal range to fight the bots is more of that medium to long range rather than being close to medium range. So this weapon can operate decently well, but the main draw of it is that it can stun enemies, which again is more single target focused. But with the bots, there are so many more bots compared to something like the Illuminates, and they're going to be shooting at you a lot, so it's kind of hard to just focus on one target to stun them up. So it does have its clear weaknesses there, and the fact that it does have an initial bounce when you are shooting it makes it a little bit more difficult to always consistently hit those headshots unless you are in single fire, which kind of defeats the purpose of the weapon because the idea is that you're supposed to build up a stun effect. So it's not great at being able to take on the bots at that longer range, which is what I would like it to. Now the biggest strength of this weapon versus the bots is against the Strider enemies and the Berserkers because they are going to be able to be stun locked a little bit easier. It does chew through Berserkers quite easily overall because they are lightly armored. And against the Strider enemies, it does stun them up pretty quickly. Shoot them in the midsection if you do want to stop them for a moment, and it will kill them pretty quickly. Against the rocket Striders, it doesn't really matter because you can shoot the little rocket, but overall I feel like that's where this weapon shines. It's mostly mediocre against the Devastators just because again it does have that initial bounce when you are shooting them at any given range. It does work decently well against the Shield Devastators more than it does the Rocket Devastators and the Base Devastators for some reason, just because it does feel like it hits that weak spot, that head spot more frequently. But even in burst mode, I tried it there. It doesn't quite work as well as I would like. Now, the nice thing about it is, again, if you are single targeting a Devastator or like a Rocket Devastator or something like that, it will stop them from shooting, which is nice. But in a lot of situations, you're facing like 3 or 4 Devastators at once, and the other ones will still be shooting at you, even if you hit them with a stray bullet or two. So overall, I didn't love this weapon versus the Devastators, but it was fine in general. Now, the other cool thing about this weapon is that it can actually stun lock the Hulk. So if you catch a Hulk with his back turned to you, you can actually stun it in place and kill it in about half a magazine, which is really strong overall. But in a lot of situations, the Hulks aren't just going to be standing there. They're usually going to be charging at you. So with this weapon, it does perform decently well against the bots. The medium pen definitely helps, but the low durable means that it's not going to be killing them fast if you're just spraying bullets at them. So a lot of times you'll go through a whole magazine and not kill a Devastator, which is quite annoying. It's got a little bit too much bounce to be able to hit those weak spots consistently, in my opinion, which makes it quite a bit of a liability there. But it has its use cases, but I would probably bring some other options that are more precise to be able to take out those weak spots and eliminate those enemies a little bit faster overall. So what are my final thoughts on the Pacifier with all of its max level attachments? It's fun to shoot. I do like the gun. I think it has its use cases. It definitely is more of a single target focused weapon, which is useful in a lot of situations, but it's a liability in a lot of other situations, which is why I can't necessarily say it's worth you going out and leveling. If you are an enjoyer of fighting the Illuminates, I would say that yes, this thing is actually pretty good versus the Illuminate. It's a lot better than I thought. Against the bots and the bugs, it has its limitations, which make it decent in terms of on the bot front, but on the bug front, it's definitely a liability in a lot of situations unless you're using it as a add-on to your build and just because you want the single target a little bit more. But in terms of the bots, yeah, it's definitely not the worst, but it's not the best bot weapon overall. So what I would like to see improved with the weapon are the following. So I really would like to see some magazine options for weapon attachments. That would be very good. It doesn't have to be a drum magazine, but I just want something to be able to make the magazine either reload faster or just give us some other options. That'd be cool. If they could, I would like to see the reload increase just in general, the base reload. Siege Ready felt fine, but it was not enough in my opinion to make it feel like it was worth it overall. I think the stun should happen very similarly to the concussive, where it's not a build up, it just happens immediately. So if you shoot an enemy with one bullet, they should be stunned for like 2 seconds. I think this would immediately make it better for horde situations on the bug front. It would make it immediately better on the bot front to be able to help stun up devastators a little bit easier. So overall, I think that mechanic needs to change a bit to make this weapon a little bit more viable against those two factions. And then the last thing is that this weapon desperately needs at least a 10 damage increase, if not a 20 damage increase. I think it should be at least online with the Liberator Penetrator, because it's more or less in that family of weapons, and the Liberator Penetrator is just better in terms of overall ammo economy and just in terms of the fact that it deals more damage, so it's overall a better weapon right now. So it'd be nice to get at least a 10 damage increase. But yeah, this weapon has a fun factor to it. It's definitely unique, but it's not something you need to rush out and level up right away. Against the Illuminate, again, I feel like it's worth it, but against the other two factions, it's not. Anyways, that's my full thoughts on having a max level pacifier. Let me know what you guys think about this video down in the comments below. More importantly, let me know what you guys think about this weapon, the strengths and weaknesses that you're enjoying. And lastly, make sure you like and subscribe for more content similar to this. But anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.